Welcome to Blonde Cards and Crafts. Let's make something together. Hello crafters, welcome to my craft room. Today we're going to be using the Love from Lizi August 2021 card kit, and I'm going to make 10 cards using products from that kit as well as other Love from Lizi products. The 10 cards we are going to make will all be different, but I have 3 that I'd like to show you. First of all, we're going to make a twisted easel card. Now it looks like your standard 6x6 card base, but our card flips up like so and it sits like this on a mantle or a shelf. So that's a twisted easel card. We're going to make one of those. We're also going to make a slimline card, and this is an 8 1/4 by 4 slimline card. And I'm going to make a card very similar to a bridge fold card, but this is a kind of a sneaky cheat. This one opens like so. So there's 3 of the cards that we're going to make, and I have a total of 10 cards for you. So if you have this kit, you might craft along with me, and if not, you might be inspired by some of the cards I make. But either way, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy my video. Our first card is going to be a standard 6x6 card base card. So we'll need a piece measuring 12x6, and we'll score it at 6. And that'll give us our card base. Now you can have it as a side opening card or as a top opening card, that's up to you. But my preference is always a side opening card. I also have this patterned paper. This piece measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. And I'm going to embellish this piece of patterned paper using my distress ink. And this distress ink is called, let me just make sure, Vintage Photo, and I have a blending brush as well, and we're going to go around the edge of that patterned paper. I've used the scalloped edge dies that we got in the kit, and I have cut out this one, and I'm using the 3rd from the biggest, so it's 3 dies in. And I'm also going to put some of the Vintage Photo around that. I'm going to put these 2 die cut words, many thanks, and I have used a die set that I got in one of my kits from Love from Lizi, and I'll leave links to everything down below. But I'm going to put those 2 words on my little die cut scalloped edge. This piece was just an offcut from the patterned paper, and I'm going to pop that inside just to embellish the inside of the card. So that's all the piece and parts that we're going to need for this card, other than a stamped sentiment. Now I'm using this one, and it's a stamped sentiment from the Card Making Magic, the Christina Collection. And all of my cards are going to be either just a note or a thanks, because this is something I'm lacking in my stash. So although there are great stamps and sentiments in the kit, most of mine will all be thank you cards. Okay, so when you're embellishing your pattern paper, you can use your distress ink to do that and your blending brush, and just go around the outside, around the edge. Now that'll give you a pretty nice look. You can see that here. But I have a piece of copy paper. I laminated this and I use it for when I'm doing ink blending. And you can see now by using the brush, by pushing down, I actually get more ink on my paper. So that's our focal piece done. So again, I'm going to do the same with my scalloped edge die cut. Now I was just going to go gently along the scallops, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use my blending sheet there and do both of them the same. The glue I'm going to mostly be using for my cards is the Collal Glue or the Art Glitter Glue. And you'll see that for the larger pieces, I use the Collal Glue to stick it down. Gives me a little bit of wiggle room, and it's also, when the Collal Glue dries, it dries really hard and stiff, so it gives great strength to our cards. So I've popped some foam tape on the back of our die cut circle. I'm going to add some glue to my words. So although I'm starting with the thanks, I should really be starting with the many. So I'm just going to pop dots of glue around on the letters. And the great thing about this glue is when it dries matte and it dries clear, so you don't actually see any residue. So if there's a little bit of splodging behind the letters, you don't see it. That's what I've found, so hence the reason I'm sticking with that glue. I'm going to use the Good Friends Are Like Stars. You don't always see them, but they are there, and that's one of the sentiments in the stamp set that we got from Lizi. And the reason I'm using that stamp on this card is because of our pattern paper. It's all stars, so I thought the two really went well together. So I'm going to use some of my Versafine, and this is the majestic blue color that I'm using to stamp this down. And I love the Versafine ink because it gives a really good impression when you're just using a block. So now we just add our little strip of paper in there, and then for finishing touches I'm going to use some of the lovely little star gems that we got in the kit. Now these have a sticky back on them, but I like to put just a little dot of glue to be sure that they're not going to pop off. But I'm sure if someone tries hard enough to pull them off, they will come off. But I like to just be sure. I'd hate for someone to open up the card and one of the stars fall off into the envelope. But there you go, that's our first card. For card number 2, I wanted to do something like a bridge fold card, but make it easy. So I thought I would use a 10 by 7 piece of card. I've scored it at 5, and that's going to give us a 5 by 7 card. Now I'm going to turn it around so it's a top folding card, and I'm going to do some scoring and cutting on that. I've also used the scallop dies that came in the kit, and I have die cut out. You can see here I have 3 die cut out, but we're going to need 4. We're going to need this one, and this is on a lovely opalescent cardstock, and I use the second largest die. You can see that there. And then for these, I've used the largest die. So we want 1 in green and we want 2 in the white. And you'll see why later on. So I'm delighted with that. I think that opalescent paper will look really nice. And that I had in my stash. I've used the watercolor card to cut out this piece, and it measures 3 3/4 by 4 3/4. And I also have 4 pieces of that watercolor card, and they're 1 1/4 by 4 3/4. I'm also going to use this butterfly. It's from a cut apart, and you can see here I've already fussy cut that out. And don't get rid of the bottom piece because there's that yellow strip. You could cut that out and stamp a sentiment on that if you wanted. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is take our card base and we want to cut out our opening for that, and we're going to do that on this piece. So I'm going to rotate this around because that'll be the front of our card, and what I want to do is from the left side I want to measure over, and I'm coming over 1.5 inches, and I'm going to score then down to that first score line there in the middle. Then I'm going to come over to the 5.5, and I'm going to again score all the way down from 5.5 down to our score line there in the middle. Lovely. So now we have guides for our cutting because we want to cut along those 2 score lines we just made and across the top. So I'm using my sharp Fiskars scissors. Oh, that was a bit of a tongue twister. And I'm cutting up along here, but I want to make sure I cut off the score line. And these scissors have gotten a little bit of sticky on them, so I was kind of struggling there a bit. So that's the next thing I'm going to do is clean my scissors. But I've cut up one side, now I'm going to cut up the other side. And we want this to be nice and straight because we'll be able to see this cut. So I'm cutting off the score line, and then I'm going to cut across the top between those 2. So I folded those little legs back behind our card so that I can cut off this one piece. And again, I'm going to cut it off and I'm going to take the score line away with it. So I'm sorry now you're just out of view. I was so busy concentrating on what I was cutting and getting it right, I forgot to make sure to stay in shot. But there you go, you can see now the panel that we've cut out of there. Lovely. So we just need a piece to bridge across those two legs, and that's what our die cut scalloped circles are for. So now I'm going to speed everything up. I've glued down the two panels on either side on the front of the card, and this panel is going to go in the middle, and it actually ends up on the inside of our card. Now all we need to do is glue down our two panels on the inside of the card. Lovely. And I find that it's great to have the Collal glue, gives me a little wiggle room. Now we're going to bridge those two panels either side using our largest scalloped die, and I'm just putting a little mark there on each side so I'll know I'm just adding glue to the very tips of those scallops. Literally, there's 3 little scallops that I'm adding a little bit of glue to. I'm going to make sure now that I get them evenly placed on there, a little bit each side. And I'm going to take the other white scallop and I'm going to glue that behind. So again, it'll bridge between the two panels on the left and right. It will also give strength to the front of our card, and it looks really good from the inside. So that's why we needed the third die cut circle, because we'll use that for inside or behind there, and it'll give us a place to write our message. So now with our front panel here, I've put on some foam tape. Just want to give it a bit of dimension and lift it up. And then we can add our butterfly. Now I'm sticking the base or the body of the butterfly down, but the wings I have lifted up. I'm going to stick down my sentiment, and it's just a note. Again, die cut from dies from Lizi's web store. And once I have those down, I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to put a dollop of hot glue behind my butterfly's wings close to the body. Now here I'm putting our scalloped panel for us to write on, and if you sit that behind the front and then drop that down, it should line up perfectly, which it has. I'm delighted with that. Lovely. So there you go, you can see me putting the glue, and I have that put close to the body, and when the hot glue dries, it will dry solid and hard. So when we put our card in an envelope, our butterfly wings will stay up, and even if it travels through the postal service, when it gets to the recipient, the wings still stay up. Now you can use some foam tape to do that, and you can get clear see-through foam tape that you can use as well, but I just find that the hot glue gun, if it's here beside me and it's switched on, it's so handy to do that. Now I'm going to finish off by using some of these lovely little, I suppose they're a gold colored diamante gem, and this is going to be like the butterfly trail. I'm then going to take some of my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. I'm going to put that on the butterfly's wings, and then I'm going to take my glossy accents and I'm going to add some glossy accents to the body of our butterfly. Now when this goes on, it goes on cloudy, but when it dries lovely and clear and glossy. And there you go, that's our second card, our butterfly, just a note. Our next card is a 6x6 card, so for that you'll need a piece of 12x6 card and scored at 6. And again, I'm going to have a side folding card, but you could have a top folding card if you like for this one. Onto that, I'm going to add some pattern paper from the kit, and this piece measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. I also have some vellum, and this vellum is from my stash. This piece measures 6 3/4 by 4, and I'm going to wrap that around our pattern paper. I have some thin 1/4 inch double-sided sticky tape on this, and that way when I wrap it around my pattern paper, my vellum then will stick behind my pattern paper, and you won't see, it'll look as if it's just floating there, because any adhesive you put behind vellum, it shows through. So I'm just going to wrap the vellum around, and you can see there the sticky tape doesn't come right up to the edge. It's actually well behind the patterned paper. And then I can slide it up or down and decide where I want that on the card. So that's going to be that piece there. Then next I have another lovely die cut scallop circle. And I've used the 3rd largest die to die cut out this scallop circle. And I'm going to nestle that over there in the bottom left hand corner. I have a big thanks die, and that's from the December 2019 card kit. You can see it here, big thanks, and that's the die itself. Now I'm not going to use the big part. I'm going to cut that off and just use the thanks. There we go. But you could use both words if you wanted, but I just wanted the thanks in the middle there, like so. Okay, so let's go ahead now and put our card together. So I have my vellum stuck down to the back of my patterned paper, and now I'm going to stick that down. And to do that, I'm going to use some tape where the acetate is, and this is double-sided tape. And then for the rest of it, I'm going to use some liquid glue. And the glue I'll be using will be my Collal Glue. Once I have that on my pattern paper, I can then stick that down to the front of my card base. Lovely. Once that's done then, I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of my scalloped circle. And I got this foam tape from Lizi's web shop. And I will leave links to what I can find down below, but most of the products that I am using are from Lizi's web shop, except for the things like the Collal Glue and the distress inks, etc. Okay, so I have my thanks stuck down. Now I'm going to use these lovely gold wreaths for the top and bottom, and I'm going to take one of the die cut gold heart stickers, and I'm going to put one above the thanks and then 2 more either side of the circle there. You can see there I'm just using a little bit of liquid glue behind my stickers just to make sure that they stay on. I've taken my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen and I'm just putting that over the word thanks. And then I'm going to work on the inside. So again, I'm using the Someone Special, Someone Kind stamp. And I'm also going to use 2 of the stickers. They're the smaller wreaths in gold, one for above and one for below, and just one of the little gold hearts. And that will finish the inside of our card, and that is card number 3. Card 4 is a Z-fold card, and you'll need a 6x6 card base. And for that, you'll need a piece of 12 by 6 card, and I've scored it at 3 and at 6. And to embellish that, we're going to use some patterned paper. So I've folded my card in half and then folded back on the other score line so we get our Z shape. For the large area on our card, I have this piece of patterned paper, and it measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and that'll sit here. Then I have a white piece of card. Now this is an option. You can put this piece, which measures 5 1/2 by 5 1/2, on top of that. And then you can use an offcut. You can see there I have a piece of pattern paper, the same as our die cut scalloped one. So you can do that. Then take your 2 panels. These measure 2 3/4 by 5 3/4. And put them there. And then I've die cut out the this panel here using the largest of the scallop dies. I've also used some dies from my stash. These alphabet dies I got from the Love from Lizi card kit. And that was the August card kit. And so I've die cut out the thank you, and the piece that come out from the O I've actually used to embellish the top and put a little gold heart on that. And I've taken one of the flower stickers and put that to the bottom. So this piece is going to go on the front, and you can see how it looks there with our white piece behind it. But if we take it away and put our white scallop back there, our other one, which is the same size, if we put that behind it and then lift up our front of our card, then what you will see is this. And I love this idea. I think it's different and it gives us plenty of room to write our sentiment. So that's what I'm going to go ahead with. So now let's assemble our card. And I'm going to put my large patterned paper base in, and then I'm going to put the two side panels down. And again, you can see there I'm using the Collal Glue. Lovely. And once they're down, then we can stick our focal point to the front, and we're only sticking down the left side of our scalloped piece. So you need to be sure when you glue this, you only put glue onto the left hand side, because the right hand side is going to be floating, it won't be stuck to anything. And once I have that nicely centered, press it down. Then I can take my scalloped white piece, put some glue on the back of that, and if I have that shadowed right behind the front piece, it should sit nicely down there, and then I can add my pressure and stick that down. And there you go, there is our Z-fold card. We just need to embellish it a little bit more, and that's what I'm going to do now. And then all I'm going to do to finish this up is take my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and I'm going to use that on the letters for the word thank you. And then that's our card number 4 finished. Card 5 is going to be a shaker card, and I have a card base here and it measures 10 by 7, scored at 5, and that'll give us a 5 by 7 card base. Perfect. I also have this piece of patterned paper, and it measures 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, and I'm going to stick that onto the front of my card, just like so. Perfect. Now I'm going to stick this down first, because while I'm going through the other stuff that I'll be using, it will allow this to dry, because I'm going to cut out an opening on the front of our card, and I want to make sure that my pattern paper is dry on the front of our card base. So I'm going to do that now before I move on to the rest. Okay, so we got these 2 gold frames in the kit, and I've used the packaging from my stamp set. I'm using it like an acetate on these 2. We also got some sequins. I have a strip here of this pattern paper, and it's 1 inch by 4 3/4, as well as my die cut words warm thanks, and this is from this die set. It's it's from an old card kit, but I've used that one for my sentiment here. Okay, so with these photo pieces here, I've put some red liner tape as well as some double-sided tape on the back of these, and what we're going to do is we're going to put our piece of acetate or packaging on over this hole. But before I do that, I've one done already, and I've put some double-sided foam tape on the other one. Before I do it on this one, I need to use this to cut out the opening on our card base. Now you can see here I have this one prepped with our foam tape. That one will go on the front of our card base, and then the other one is going to go inside our card. So literally it's like a double-sided window is what we're going to put in here. So I have this one down in place where I want it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to draw the outline of the opening inside. So I'll go all around the inside, and this is going to give me an idea of where I want to cut out my opening. Now you can use a die if you have a die in your stash that'll cut it out, or you can use a paper trimmer and you can cut it out using that, or you can use the scissors. I hope you can see there. I can see my pencil lines perfectly. So I'm going to cut an X into this, and then I'm going to use my scissors to cut around it. So I'm speeding this up supersonic fast, and I'm going to cut out my opening there. I'm going to make sure when I'm cutting this out as well that I get a nice straight even cut, because I don't want any of it to be seen. So I've just making sure that I have cut enough away. I want to be just outside the line. So the opening is a little bit bigger than the aperture there. And I'm happy with that now. From both sides, it looks really, really good. So now I just need to put my packaging or my acetate, whatever you're using, on the back of this. And once I get off all my double-sided tape, I can stick this down. And once that's in place, then I need to go around that again with some double-sided tape. So this will now stick onto the inside of our card base. So I have some blue liner tape here. It's the same as red liner tape. It's just a really strong adhesive by a different brand. So once I get all the release paper off that, then I can stick down our photo frame on the inside of our card base. So this only has the double-sided tape on this one. The other photo frame is the one that has our foam tape. So that one now is going to go on the front of our card. But before we put that one down, I'm going to put down my sequins. And I have a good amount of the sequins going in there. Now I've used my anti-static bag around the edge of the foam tape before I remove the release paper. And that'll just help the sequins to move around there a little better. And that's lovely. I'm delighted with that now. And it's great that you can see through it. I think it's kind of novel, you know. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is empty the leftover sequins into my little dish. These are, they're ashtrays, but you know, none of us smoke, so handy to use them for something else. I'm going to glue down my sentiment, my warm thanks, using my art glitter glue. And once that's stuck down, I'm then going to embellish the front of our card with the sequins, as well as the inside of our card. So inside I've stuck down my strip of patterned paper, and now I'm stamping my sentiment. You'll be able to see this through the window, and if you don't want it to be seen, you could actually stamp it lower down. But there we go. All I'm going to do now is finish up by filling the sequins with some glossy accent. I love the look that this gives for a finished card. And now we're moving on to card number 6. And this is a sunny card. It makes me smile. I'm using a 6x6 card base, so you'll need a piece of card measuring 12 by 6 and scored in the middle at 6. This card will be a side opening card, and I'm going to decorate this using some pattern paper and ribbon. So my piece of pattern paper measures 2 3/4 by 5 3/4, and that'll sit on the left hand side like so. I also have a strip of this patterned paper, and this piece is 1 inch by 5 3/4, and I'm going to put that on the right hand side like so. I've also got this piece of ribbon, and the ribbon we got lots of ribbon in the kit, but it's a thin ribbon. So what I've done is I've put some of my double-sided tape on a white piece of card. I've laid my ribbon on over it and stuck it down, so it's given it a little bit more strength. And this then I will glue down onto my card like so. So we'll have a nice 1/4 inch border all the way around our patterned paper piece. I tied a little bow, and I did that off screen because no one wants to watch me doing that. And I've die cut out one of our scalloped circles. And this one is using the second largest die that came in the kit. I've also die cut out this circle, and I've used this from a die in my stash. It's a Made to Surprise die, and it gives this lovely open relief area around like so. I'm going to put this on top of my yellow scalloped piece, and I'm going to put some foam tape between the two, and I'll sit that then astride the ribbon like so. Now I'll probably put the ribbon down at the bottom. I think that would look nice, and then I'll put our many thanks then here. So it's kind of like, it kind of reminded me of a Christmas bauble, and that's why I put the bow to the bottom. I thought it didn't look so much like a Christmas bauble that way. So we'll just finish then embellishing with the gems, and I'm going to speed everything up now and put this together. So I'm going to put my piece of pattern paper on the inside, and I'm also going to stamp later on my sentiment inside as well. And I'm going to stamp the someone special, someone kind, you're the one who comes to mind, just to say a big thank you for all the lovely things you do. I just really liked that verse, and I thought that could be, you know, given to anyone where you're saying a thank you, you know, for them being so special or so kind. Okay, so I've stuck down my many thanks, and I'm going to add some foam tape to this. I'll stick that onto the yellow one, and then I'll add some foam tape behind that, stick that down onto the front of our card, and then I'll add my little bow. Now my bow, I'm going to stick that down using some hot glue, because I feel that way there's no fear of it coming off. And then we're embellishing it using our gems. And for a finish, I'm going to take my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. I'm going to embellish the many thanks with my sparkle pen, as well as the centers of our flowers on the front of our card. And that is card number 6, all done. This card, card 7, is again a 6x6 card base. So I have a piece of card measuring 12 by 6. I've scored it at 6, and that's going to give us a side folding card base. I have this panel of plain cardstock, and it's 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and it's going to go on the front of our card. I've also die cut out a scalloped circle. This is the largest circle, and I've taken this and a die from my stash. And what I've done is I've die cut out my scalloped circle, and I've also die cut out the center of it. Now I've used these two together and die cut out on my card, so I have this lovely frame. And this frame, I'm going to keep the inside die, my straight edged die, and I'm going to use it to cut an opening on the front of our card base. So when our frame is on here, this die is going to cut out an opening so we can see through to the inside of our card. And on the inside of our card, I'm going to have the pattern paper. So when I die cut that out, I want to be very sure that I only die cut out the front of our card base. You'll see the pattern paper there with all the lovely birds. This piece is the same size as our green matte layer on the front. It's 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and I want my opening to showcase my lovely birds. And with the leftover pattern paper, I've fussy cut out all these little bird images. There's 5 bird images, as well as all these little leaves. And some of the leaves that I have die cut out, the edge of one leaf is cut off, but I'll put some under our scalloped frame and some over our scalloped frame. I've die cut out just a note as well, and we're going to stick those onto the front of our card. So let's go ahead now and assemble everything. So I've die cut out the opening on the front of our card base, and now I'm going to stick in my lovely pattern paper, and then I'm going to put my frame down. Before I do that, I'm going to embellish the front of the card. I'm going to put little score lines around it, and I think it just it takes the plainness, I feel, off the plain card, that matte layer that we have down there. So this is just something I sometimes do on a card, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Now I'm going to glue down my patterned paper on the inside of our card base. So you might be thinking, well, Simone, where are we going to write our message? on the back of the card itself. That's where I'm going to do it. And I will cut out an extra green card layer and a white card layer for the back, but I'll go through that when we get there. Now I have stuck my frame down using my liquid glue, and I'm going to faff around for a minute, deciding where I want all my little birds and my little leaves. I've also got some foam tape there, and I have that sitting on some release paper, and that way I'll be able to cut little strips and little pieces for behind my leaves and my birds. Some I will stick straight down onto the front of our card, and some I'll put on foam tape. So I'm putting this on very high speed, so you can see I debated actually editing this part out, but I thought I would leave it in. Even though it's a long video, I figured it would be nice for you to kind of see how I'm looking at where I'm putting things, deciding where things need to go, whether I'm going to glue them down or put some foam tape behind them. So I thought it'd be nice to leave this part in, that you can see how it goes from start to finish, and where I decide to place my little birds and my little leaves. And I'm being very aware of the image inside the frame as to what I'm going to put on or around the outside of our frame. The 2 strips of foam tape that I have here, I have that set on some grease-proof paper. So it's like what you would use for baking. And the reason I use that is when I want to cut off little pieces of my foam tape, it means that my scissors aren't going to get sticky and glued up, and that way it makes it easier to cut your foam. So you can either use release paper from a wider tape. Sometimes I keep the release paper when I cut it off wider tape to use for my skinnier foam tape, but greaseproof or non-stick paper is always great to have in your craft room for times like this. Okay, so now we're back to a normal fast speed, and I'm just going to stick down the words "just a note," and I've that across the bottom. And once I've that done, then I'm going to do the back of our card. I love the front of it. I'm really pleased with the imagery of this card. When I saw this pattern paper, I really loved it. It's one of my favorite pattern papers out of all the pattern paper we got in this kit. So I wanted to do something special with it. And even though this card is just a note, I think it's a keeper. So now once the front of the card has been embellished, we can then move on to the back of our card. And like I said, with the back of our card, we're going to put some mats and layers on there. So this white piece measures 5.5 by 5.5. My green card measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and we'll sit them on the back like so. Now, I had a leftover leaf sprig as well as a little bird who's got the back end cut off, but it looks just perfect peeking there from the left hand side of our card, and I think that will be perfect. Again, I will stamp the stamp someone special, someone kind, and I'll do that in a nice green ink on the back. So for a finishing touch, all we need to do is embellish, and I'm going to use my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and I'm going to put that on the leaves as well as the wings of our birds. And I'm also going to take my glossy accents, and I'm going to fill the 2 birds on the pattern paper. So these are literally the inside of the card, but it's these 2 birds I'm going to use the glossy accents on, and then I'm going to dot all the eyes on our birds with a little dot of the glossy accent. And there you go. That is card 6, all finished. I love it. Card 7 is our twisted easel, and for this piece we will need a card base measuring 12 by 6, and we'll score it at 6. We also want to score this from the top right hand corner diagonally down to the bottom left hand corner, and once we fold that on that score line, it will give us this really cool shape. And it's, as I said, a twisted easel. So score it just the front from the right down to the bottom left. I have also die cut out one of the scalloped circles, and this one is the largest. I've used the largest die for this scallop circle. I've also used my straight cut circle die to die cut out our white piece on here. I've embellished all this using stickers from the sticker sheet. So I've taken 3 of the hearts, you can see here, here, and here, and I've put them on the front. Now, 2 of them are stuck down flat and the middle one is raised up. There's a sentiment there and it says, "You are my son," but I didn't want it to say "my son," so I used the other heart to cover it up. So it says "you are," and then I've used the "always kind" sticker, as well as some of the little hearts. So that's the front. You can see the layers of foam tape that I have used there. The "always kind" is up, it's 2 layers deep, but I love a little bit of dimension on my cards, and you don't need to use foam tape if you don't want. You can just stick them all down one on top of the other. So I have cut out 2 pieces of this black card, and it's 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and on one of them you need to cut diagonally from the top right to the bottom left, and I have that done here on this piece. Lovely. So you can see there I cut from the top right hand corner down to the bottom left hand corner, and that is going to give us our mats for this front of our card. Now I've also cut out using my trimmer this white piece, and this measures 5.5 by 5.5, and I've also cut out a piece 5.5 by 5.5 in our patterned paper, the lovely feathered pattern paper. And again with this we need to die cut it, or we need to cut it down using our trimmer from, again, right to left. I'm showing you from left to right, but we can just rotate our papers down. So you can see there the orientation of my patterned paper. I've cut it from the top right hand corner down to the bottom left hand corner, and that has given us our lovely mats and layers for the front of our card. And I'll use my Collal glue to glue those down. So our front will look like this, and our inside will look like this. So in order for our twisted easel to stand up, we need to put something on the inside of our card, and I have this piece here. I have a black strip which measures 5.5 by 1 1/8, and then I have put foam tape behind that, and I have put a piece of the pattern paper which measures 5.5 by 1 inch on top. So our little corner there will actually sit up against that foam tape piece. The foam tape just holds it in place like so. And then all we need to do is add on our lovely little focal piece. So I'm starting with the inside of the card. I've put down my black matte layer and my white matte layer, and I'm stamping down my sentiment, and you can see there I have it towards the top left hand corner, and I've put that there because I want to make sure that when my easel is standing up you actually won't see our verse. You can see there, once our strip of foam taped paper goes in, it'll kind of be hidden behind the twisted part of our easel. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to now move on to the front, and we want to glue our mats and layers together. So I'm going to do that. And there we go, the magic of editing. So we have our mats and layers down on one corner. Now we're going to do the other corner, and all we need to do then is add on our focal point. So this piece needs to be glued down to the mats and layers on this side, on the right side. So we're only sticking down 1/2 of this focal image. So you need to be very certain where you're putting your glue. So I've kind of made a note there using where my fingertips are. I know that I only want to have my glue on this kind of right hand bottom side of my scalloped circle. And you can see there, once that's pressed down and I flip that up, you can see that the top part of our scallop circle, it didn't stick to the top part because it needs to be able to float free so it can stand just like so. Now all we need to do is take the release paper off our strip and add that in. Now whenever you're using foam tape, if you put a little liquid glue on that, it'll give you a little bit of wiggle room when you're putting it in place. That way, rather than the foam tape adhering straight away, it actually gives me a little bit of wiggle room. So there's a little trick for you there. Lovely. Okay, so now I'm going to finish up embellishing our card. I'm taking one of the little love hearts and I'm going to put that on the inside of the card over near our verse. And then I'm going to take my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen and any of the black on our feathers on our pattern paper, I'm going to go over them using that. But that is our twisted easel card. I think this is a really cool card and I think anyone who gets this will be really delighted with this card. It's just so different from anything you get in a shop. And now we're going to move on to card number 8. For card number 8, I'm going to make a 6x6 card base card. So again, I have my piece of cardstock. I have all the bits inside. This piece of cardstock measures 12 by 6 and again I've scored it at 6. So we have a lovely soft pink card base, and again you can have it as a side folding card or as a top folding card. I've taken this piece of white paper and it's about an 80 GSM paper, and I've used this lovely Love Heart stencil that we got. Now this stencil we got in a previous kit and I thought it would be cool to use that to emboss our page. So we have these lovely little hearts which have been embossed into the paper using a stencil. I love it. Cool idea, huh? Not mine, I have to say, totally not my idea, but it's the first time I've done that. So this piece measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. And I also have another piece of 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 for inside, so we can stamp our sentiment and write our message. I have this piece of patterned paper and it measures 1 inch by 5 3/4, and it'll embellish our page like so. Now I've used again one of the scallop dies, and this is the largest die that I've used to cut out the scallop circle. I've used my straight die to die cut out my piece of patterned paper, and I've put those two together. I've just glued down my patterned paper onto my scalloped circle. In other kits we got some butterflies, and these I just have, they're loose, I just keep the butterflies together. So I'm going to use these for this card. So I've die cut out the larger butterfly using some white card as well as some vellum, and I've used some hot glue to keep my vellum wings up off my paper wings, and I've put a little blob of the hot glue on the back, and now it's set. My butterfly will keep its shape. I've also die cut out a plethora of these little butterflies, and I've used this thank you die from my stash. Now I got this in the works about 2 years ago, but you can use the letter dies and you could die cut out the word thank you and you could stick it on the front just like this. So if you die cut out the words thank you 2 times, you could actually do something similar. Now I'm going to pop my butterfly in the middle there, and then I'm going to take some of these teeny weeny butterflies and I'm going to embellish the front. I'm going to use 6 of these little butterflies for a finish, and I'm also going to put 2 of them on the inside. So let's go ahead now and speed everything up and assemble our card. You can see there I have the white card already stuck down, and now I'm putting down my strip, and I had a little bit of glue oozed out, but I can just wipe that away and that'll be perfect. I'm going to stamp my sentiment in the Versafine Onyx black ink, and with that done then all I have to do is embellish the inside with 2 little butterflies. I'm going to put one to the right here and then one to the left. Lovely. And I die cut those butterflies out using the pattern paper that you see on this card. I just use the scraps, and I find it's great when you have like 1 inch by 1.5 inches of scrap. What do you do with it? Well, Simone die cuts out tiny little butterflies rather than throw it away. Okay, so now I have my stencil embossed matte layer on the front. That's down, stuck and glued. Now I'm going to put down my thank you die cut, and I'll pop that down there. And I've used foam tape behind the thank you die cut, so it gives a little bit of dimension, because we'll add dimension with some foam tape to the back, and we'll also have the dimension with our little butterfly in the middle. Then we'll just take the release paper off this foam tape and then add that to the front of our card. I love that. I love the dimension on it. It's really cool. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of hot glue just to stick down my butterfly inside. And then I'm going to put some little dots of glue down for my small butterflies. And although I'm only sticking them down in the center part of their bodies, there is dimension there, so it should keep them up, but I'm not too bothered about the wings, whether they're up or down. And I'll come along with a fine liner pen and I'll put some antenna on my little butterflies as well before I'm finished. I think the hardest part is actually deciding where the little butterflies go. But I'm delighted with that. It's like as if they're fluttering across the card from one corner to the other. And of course we have to put the antenna in, because butterflies aren't butterflies unless the antenna are there. And now we're moving on to our final card, card number 10. So for this card I'm using a slimline card base, and this measures 8 by 8.25, and I've scored it at 4. And the reason I make my slimline cards this size is because the envelopes I have, I got this pack of envelopes and I figured I might as well make my card base to fit. So hence the reason that's the size that I make. I also have this piece of patterned paper, and it measures 3.5 by 7.75. It'll sit on the front of our slimline card like so. This piece of pattern paper measures 1 inch by 7.75, and it'll sit inside to the right like so. Lovely. I have some of these photo corners that I'll use on the pattern paper. I have this butterfly. I've cut that out of some of the pattern paper, and I'll be using some of the stickers on our sticker sheet as well to embellish the front of our card. So now I'm going to take some of these little photo corners and I'm going to put them onto the corner of our pattern paper. And they are sticky on the back, so you need to kind of be careful. I was doing a bit of finagling getting these on. So it's just being careful, because with them being sticky on the back, they tended to want to stick to my fingers. But I'm going to put one on each corner like so. I like the look of that. I think it looks good. I mean, you could use this with photographs or whatnot, but I just thought this would embellish our patterned paper. And you can see there our patterned paper, I went around the edge of that using my vintage photo as well as my Versafine majestic blue. I went around the edge of that. So now we're going to take our Collal glue and I'm going to put a little bit at the back of each of our photo corners, as well as all around my patterned paper. And I'm going to stick that down to the front of our slimline card base. Lovely. And you can see there, the reason I put a little bit of that liquid glue onto our photo corners was so that I'd have a little bit of wiggle room. I didn't want them to stick down because they were quite sticky. I was kind of hoping that they'd give me a little chance to move them around if I needed them to. And they did, but any kind of pressure on them at all, and that was it. They were stuck down, which is great because I know now they're not going to come off. You can see there, I still have a little bit of wiggle room with that one to get it on nice and straight. But then once any bit of pressure on them at all and they're stuck down. So I love that. I'm happy with that now. Isn't that nice? Especially with the ink blending around the edge. Like I said, I used the Distress ink in the Vintage Photo and then the Versafine Majestic Blue. And I went all around them like I showed you in the previous card, on our first card. Okay, so I'm speeding everything up now and we're going to assemble the rest of our card. So I want my butterfly in the middle at the front of our card base. And I want to put one of these round stickers on the front. So I've one above my butterfly and now again a little bit of glue, and I'm going to try and get that about even with the other one. Put that down the bottom. So our butterfly now, I'm going to stick that down and it'll be between the two. Lovely. And you can see there my wings are raised up, but again I'll use some hot glue behind the wings and that'll keep them propped up on the front of our card. So I'm taking two of the little gold hearts. I think these are the last. No, I have 3 gold hearts left. So I have the 2 there either side of the butterfly and then I'll put 1 on the inside. Now I want to put something, a sentiment astride the butterfly, and I was looking at the stickers here and I went for this one, Heart of Gold, but if I use it as it is, it kind of hides a lot of the butterfly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this on some white cardstock and then I'm going to fussy cut around the sentiment. And I'll stick that down onto my butterfly using some hot glue. I'll put a drop of hot glue on the left of the sentiment and the right of the sentiment, so it's just stuck down onto the edge of the butterfly's wings. Perfect. And now I'm going to take the strip of patterned paper and I'm going to add one of the photo corners to the top right hand side and one to the bottom right hand side. And these are the last 2 photo corners that we got. I'll use some of my liquid glue now and I'll stick this to the inside of our card. And I'm going to put it along on the right hand side like so. Now all we need to do is stamp our sentiment inside. I'm using the stamp You Are Simply Amazing, and this is from a stamp and die set that we got in our April 2020 card kit. So I thought that would work really nice with this card. So there we go. That is our 10th card all done. So starting from the first card and working our way through, here's some images of the 10 cards we've made. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Reddit. So if you make these cards and you're on a social media platform, please tag me. I'd love to see your card makes. Whether you use Lizzie's card kit or not, I'd love for you to tag me. You can find links down below in the description to the products that I've used, as well as Lizzie's website. So there you go. I hope you liked my video, and if you did, you might consider giving it a thumbs up. That way the little YouTube bots will know that you enjoyed it. If you're a subscriber, thanks for subscribing, and if not, you might click on that bell icon. That way you'll be notified each time I post a new video. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video and the images. Until next time, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.